Kanye West is difficult to talk about because almost every version of him sounds incomplete. If you call him a genius, you ignore the harm. If you call him crazy, you ignore the talent. If you call him evil, you ignore the wound. And if you only call him misunderstood, then you excuse way too much. The real question is how those two things became so tangled that even he may not know where one ends and the other begins. Because Kanye West did not become who he is overnight. He became Kanye slowly, through rejection, belief, grief, fame, humiliation, praise, and a word that kept rewarding the most extreme parts of him until the performance and the person started blending together. And to understand why Kanye does the things he does, including the most disturbing things, you have to understand the psychological pattern underneath it. Kanye's story begins with a wound that sounds simple. You do not see me. Before he was one of the most famous artists in the world, Kanye was a producer from Chicago trying to convince people that he was more than a producer. He was making beats, he had talent, he helped shape records for other artists, but he wanted to rap, and the industry did not immediately know what to do with him. At the time, Kanye did not fit the clean image of what many record labels expected from a rapper. He was not selling the same street identity, he was not trying to be the hardest person in the room. He wore polos, he talked about insecurity, he talked about God, money, school, family, status, and self-doubt in the same breath. The things that made him original were also the things that made him hard to market. For years, he had to fight against the category other people placed him in. And that's pretty interesting psychologically, because when a person spends enough time being underestimated, they can develop a powerful inner voice. At first, that voice protects them. It says, do not let them define you, do not shrink, do not accept the small room they built for you. For Kanye, that voice helped him survive. Without it, there may be no college dropout, no cultural shift, no producer becoming the main voice, no artist showing that rap could hold insecurity, faith, humor, ambition, and contradiction without losing power. Kanye's confidence was not random, it was armor. And at the beginning, the armor worked. The college dropout was not just an album, it was proof. It proved that the version of Kanye other people doubted was not imaginary. It proved that he was not just behind the scenes talent. It proved that the contradiction within him could become a sound that other people recognized in themselves. That was why people connected with him so deeply. Kanye is not perfect in any way, and I guess that's the point. He sounds conflicted all the time. He sounds hungry. He sounds like someone trying to become larger than the life other people had assigned to him. In a way, that's inspiring. There's something meaningful about watching a person refuse to accept smaller versions of themselves. They let the world name them too early, and then they spend the rest of their lives living inside of that name. Kanye refused that. But the thing that saves you in one part of your life can destroy you in another. Because eventually, Kanye was no longer the rejected producer. He was not the outsider begging to be taken seriously. He became one of the most influential artists on earth. That world that once doubted him began to praise him, study him, copy him, call him a genius. And this is where the danger begins. When you have been doubted for years, success does not always heal you. Sometimes it teaches you a dangerous lesson. You start telling yourself things like they were wrong before, so maybe they'll always be wrong. And that's a psychological trap. Every criticism starts sounding like the old rejection. Every boundary starts looking like a gatekeeper. Every consequence starts feeling like oppression, and the ego, which once protected you from being erased, starts protecting you from being corrected. And that's how confidence becomes isolation. Not because a person believed in themselves too much, because they begin to believe that any challenge to their behavior is an attack to their identity. And Kanye's life seemed to follow that pattern again and again. He pushes against a boundary. Sometimes the result is a genius, sometimes the result is damage. But because boundary breaking once made him great, it becomes harder to know when the boundary is creative and when the boundary is moral. That difference matters. A visionary crosses limits to create something more alive. A person trapped in defiance crosses limits just to prove no one can stop them. And that's where Kanye's most disturbing behavior has to be taken seriously. When Kanye praised Hitler and made anti-Semitic comments, that was not a bold artistic risk. It was not some misunderstood creative experiment. It was harmful and just historically ugly. But if we are trying to understand the psyche, the question becomes, why would someone reach for the most radioactive symbol available? Not to excuse it, to understand the mechanism. Kanye often appears to mistake shock for truth. If people are horrified, he seems to treat that horror as evidence that he found something forbidden and important. Not everything forbidden is deep. Some things are forbidden because they're cruel. Some lines exist because history already showed us what happens when people cross them. This is where the ego becomes dangerous. It stops asking, is this true? Starts asking, can anyone even tell me no? And when the ego reaches that point, freedom becomes distorted. A person may think they're liberated because they can say anything, they can do anything, they can destroy anything, but real freedom is not the absence of restraint. Real freedom is the ability to choose what is right, even when your impulses are screaming for control. Kanye's story also cannot be separated from grief. His mother, Donda West, was one of the central emotional figures in his life. She believed in him before the world did. But more than that, she seemed to know the person underneath the performance. She was not just attached to Kanye the artist, she was attached to Kanye the son. When she passed in 2007, something changed in the emotional shape in his life. That does not explain everything. Grief does not excuse hatred. Losing someone you love does not give you permission to harm other people either. But grief can remove an anchor. And when the person who knew how to reach you is gone, the world can give you more attention than ever and still leave you less grounded than before.
Come off a little arrogant even though you're humble and everything, but it'd be important to remember that the giant looks in the mirror and sees nothing. You know what I mean?
So do you think applause does not replace an anchor. Money does not replace an anchor. Fans don't replace an anchor. Fame is one of the worst environments for an unhealed wound because fame does not ask you to become whole. Fame asks you to become more visible. If your pain is loud, fame makes it louder. If your ego is large, fame makes it a kingdom. If your identity is built around proving people wrong, fame gives you millions of people to argue with. And that's why Kanye is not just a story about a celebrity. He's a story about what happens when a human being becomes trapped inside the survival strategy that once saved him. His ego helped him survive rejection. Belief helped him create. His refusal helped him break through. But after a certain point, the same forces began turning against him. The armor became a cage. The confidence became a wall. The hunger to be seen becomes an inability to listen. And this is the part that's most interesting to me because Kanye is an extreme case of something ordinary people experience in a quieter way. We all have a story that helped us survive. Maybe your story is that nobody understands you. Maybe your story is that you're always the one who has to prove yourself. Maybe your story is that you cannot be weak. Or maybe your story is that everyone who criticizes you is against you. At one point, the story may have protected you. It may have helped you keep going. It may have helped you survive a family, a school, a job, a rejection, a season where nobody saw what you were carrying. But eventually, every survival strategy has to be questioned because the version of you that survived is not always the one that can become free. Kanye shows the danger of never letting the old armor come off. He also shows why talent is not enough. Talent can open doors. It can change culture. It can change history. But talent cannot make you whole. Success cannot grieve for you. Fame cannot humble you. Applause cannot tell you the truth. And being right in the past does not protect you from being wrong in the present. Maybe the real question Kanye leaves behind is not, how did someone so talented become controversial? What happens when the thing that helped you rise starts preventing you from healing? That's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the strongest part of you is not the healthiest part of you. Sometimes the voice that helped you survive rejection is the same voice that will ruin your relationship if you never learn how to quiet it. Sometimes becoming whole means thanking the armor for protecting you, then finally taking it off. Kanye West is still here, still creating, still changing, still being an innovator, still difficult to reduce to one clear explanation. But his life offers one of the clearest modern lessons about ego, grief, fame, and identity. Believe in yourself, enough to become more than what people expected, but stay humble enough to know the version of you that fought for survival is now fighting against your peace. Because being seen is not the same as being healed, and being extraordinary is not the same as being free.
Everybody want to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
If this video made you think differently about ego, identity, and what happens when a person becomes trapped inside their own mind, watch my video on what actually happened to Jim Carrey, and thank you for watching.